no one likes getting cold. Let's get right down to it. And cold on a nice ride can quickly turn it into a painful, uncomfortable affair. I've learned a few things though from staying warm over the years. And in this video, I'm going to list my top 5 things to keep you warm on your bike. First rule of keeping warm is making sure that you layer up. Having plenty of layers is a good thing, like an onion, so you can zip them undone. Is that a phrase? Unzip, that's better, when necessary, and zip up when you're starting to get cold. Gives you plenty of layers to insulate yourself, keep that warmth in. And you want to really focus on keeping your core warm. If you have a good core and keep that warm, that translates to the rest of your body, to your extremities, so you don't have to wear quite as many layers there. If you do keep your core warm, I always find that you just stay warm throughout the whole ride and you're not always starting to feel those little niggles of cold starting to creep in. But do keep the extremities covered. Don't go out in the shoulder season with bare hands like myself, because even if you don't get freezing cold, you can get uncomfortable, and that does play on your mind and play into the sensations you're feeling on the bike. Also, a really good wicking base layer underneath all those layers, so that when you do sweat, it's not going to get absolutely soaking, and when you stop or have an easier moment on the ride, like a descent, that sweat starts to get cold and make your body colder, and that's really hard to get over and then warm yourself back up. So rule number 1, plenty of layers. Don't overdress either, or assume that wearing loads of clothes will be a good idea. You want to use your layers like I just described to kind of manage your temperature throughout the ride. Don't just whack on big thick jackets and leave yourself like that, because whilst you'll stay really warm, or perhaps even be too warm, which might even actually impact your enjoyment of your bicycle ride, if you have a whopping big descent, say you live in a mountainous area for example, you'd have sweated way too much on the climb, even dehydrated yourself a little bit, and then you have that big descent, all that sweat's built up, and it's going to cool you down to the point where you do just start to let the cold get into yourself, and then it's quite hard to get around it, and it saps your energy too, because your body's having to warm itself back up. Plus, because it feels cold in the air, you might not drink as much, so you've sweated a lot, you're dehydrated. Not a good idea. So use those layers to your advantage. It's almost like being a thermostat, your own personal thermostat, so you can zip, unzip when necessary and get yourself in the perfect temperature for your ride. Extremities, hands and feet, are normally the first thing to go, the first thing you feel when you get cold. And I've heard so many people say, how do I stop getting cold hands, cold feet? I think the most important thing that I've realised is to avoid the temptation of doubling up on things like socks and gloves, so you're really like packing your feet and they're super tight in your shoes or in your gloves, because I find that restricts the blood flow. You want to really keep the blood flow moving, keep a really warm core, so make sure you put a few extra layers on your core, keep that warm, and that will translate to hands and feet. Instead of doubling up on socks, consider investing in a really good pair of gloves and a really good pair of overshoes with fleece lining. That way you're going to keep yourself warm on the outside of your shoe, and you can loosen your shoe off, allowing that blood flow to move perfectly, and you're not, tightening those feet too much. And that keeps them warmer, in my opinion. You can also pick up latex overshoes, which are a lot thinner. They're harder to get on, they won't last quite as long, but they will keep your feet dry. So if you're going in kind of spring, autumn rides, your feet are getting wet a lot and that's causing them to get cold, consider investing in a pair of them. Be sensible with your route choice if the cold is going to be your nemesis. So avoid things like starting with a long descent, as I'm about to do, or even if you live in a mountainous area, heading up to high altitude and staying there, because obviously it's going to be colder. So try and pick your route cleverly. When I was based in Nice over in France, and I used to do a lot of training rides out there, in the winter there was plenty of shaded areas and some of the real steep valleys. So I'd actually avoid going on those roads during winter time. It's just so cold, the road got icy, and there'd be such a temperature difference. So I'd avoid descending or even going up such roads, and I'd pick different training loops to do. Definitely avoid descending when it's icy, super cold. You're going to pay for it later on in the ride and struggle to warm up. Staying on short, sharp climbs and reducing those long descents is another good way to keep your body temperature up. Personally, I always try to do this in the colder winter months, and also look for those sheltered roads too, which would shelter you from the rain, the wind and the cold. Probably you're going to be pushing on a bit more than you normally would though, hitting those shorter climbs. So perhaps reduce your ride length as a result, take into account that extra energy and effort. The dreaded rain can be a nightmare when it's cold. The wind, rain and cold proving a tough combination to beat. And even if you're riding in brilliant sunshine like I am now, conditions can change, the rain can fall and suddenly go from warm to cold. So a few tips to stay warm when it does rain. I would say things like using a waterproofer on your clothes. So there's a few out there that you can get. Muck Off to a great one. You can apply to things like leg warmers, arm warmers to add that little bit of extra waterproofing protection. I actually had a teammate who used to do this all the time, and I shared a room with him at the Vuelta. One night I came up to bed and he was spraying all his clothes, waterproofing them for the next day, and that's how I knew we're in for a rainy race. However, do it in a well-ventilated area. In your bedroom in a hotel with your roommate, probably not the best idea. Mud guards, another great tip. Keeps the surface water off your body and your legs. Surface water is lying around for ages. It gets even colder, I think, than the rain that's falling, and it can spread on your legs and the riders behind you, who are never really that happy if they've got a long ride getting sprayed from head to toe. Sounds mean too, but sometimes I'd prefer to ride solo when it was raining or in a group, keeping the spray off me, keeping myself warm for longer. You're not sitting in the wheels, not doing too much, not spending too much energy and losing body temperature. If you're thinking my bike's not going to accommodate mud guards, don't worry, because there are plenty of different options out there to fit any sorts of bike, from the clip-on ones to ones that mount to your axle, to even the simple ass saver. Anything is going to be good to keep that water spray off you, keep you that little bit warmer. It does make the difference. A cafe stop is always going to take on greater importance during colder weather. It's the perfect opportunity to stop, get inside, have a hot drink, check on your riding buddy, see how they're doing, and just take a moment to warm up, make sure everyone's all right and hasn't absolutely frozen to death. It's also a good idea to make sure you can actually sit inside at the cafe, not get stuck outside like me in the cold. So maybe think about booking ahead, getting a table sorted, or bringing a bike lock so that you can leave your bikes outside with ease and not be worrying the whole time about them being stolen. Also, make sure you get a nice hot drink into you. I always go for a coffee, but if you're not a caffeinated drinker, good hot chocolate and some calories works wonders when you're starting to feel the cold on a longer ride. Like a good Snapchat. So there you go, a few of my own tips for keeping warm when the temperatures get colder. But let me know what I may have missed, and if you have any hacks for keeping yourself warm when the temperatures do start to plummet. Really interested to hear your thoughts. As always, thanks for watching. If you did find this video useful, please give it a big thumbs up, and we'll see you on the next one.